The Shulchan Aruch, the Mechaber in Siman Mem Zayin, Sif Gimel, writes about the halachas of Birchas HaTorah. Before one can study Torah, he has to make a Birchas HaTorah at the beginning of the day, and that works for the whole day. So the question is, how do you define Torah study? How do you define learning Torah? So the Mechaber says that one that writes words of Torah, hakosev b'divrei Torah, af al pi she'enek Torah, even though he's not reading, tzorech levarach, he has to make a bracha. So clearly, you don't need to verbalize the words of Torah to make a bracha, to make a bracha Torah. The problem is, in the next sif, the Mechaber seems to clearly contradict himself. And he says in Sif Dalet, HaMaharer b'divrei Torah, one that just thinks the words of Torah, Eini tzarech levarach, does not need to make a bracha. So if you write the words of Torah, even though you didn't say the words of Torah, you need to make a bracha. If you think the words of Torah, okay, albeit not writing them, but you're just thinking them, you don't make a bracha. So the Taz jumps on the Mechaber, and he's not sure exactly how to understand this, and he basically says Sveika Deiraisa, and he's Nisha B'Safik. The Gra, in his comments in Siv Dalet, disagrees with the Shulchan Aruch, and he says one that thinks Torah needs to make a bracha, even if you don't verbalize it. And he then goes on to say that it's an open pasuk in Tanakh. It's an open pasuk in the Nevi'im, Yeshua, Perek Aleph, pasuk Chav. Famous pasuk says, "V'hagisa ba yaimum v'layla." One needs to be hagisa, and Vilna Goan understands the word hagisa not to mean verbalizing it. Hagisa ba yaimum v'layla. One needs to learn Torah, even if it's just mentally. Yaimum v'layla. So the Vilna Goan says, no, you need to make a bracha even if you just think Torah, and this is an open pasuk. I'll just add in that possibly with this Vilna Goan, one can shed light on the Chabad custom that we say brachas at home. We don't wait till we go to shul. So it could be that we're being machmer for the shit of the Vilna Goan, that because when you walk in the streets, a person walks around, he's thinking words of Torah. So one would need to finish saying brachas as soon as possible, so lest he thinks words of Torah. But be that as it may, the opinion of the Vilna Goan is the Poskim have a very hard time understanding his shitta. The Aruch Hashulchan attacks the Vilna Goan at great length, and one of his strongest arguments, he quotes four psukim and one Mishnah, which seem to disagree with the Vilna Goan, his interpretation of the word v'hagisa. He brought a pasuk in Yeshua where he understood the pasuk v'hagisa bal yemim v'layla, thinking words of Torah to mean that the mitzvah of learning Torah is to think words of Torah. The Aruch Hashulchan brings four psukim in Tanakh where we see that the word v'hagisa means to verbalize, and we have a Mishnah at the beginning of Sanhedrin, and therefore he says no, the whole theory is out the window. So this topic is lengthy. The Mishnah Brura in his Bir Halacha in Siman Mem Zayin over there, I'll refer you to his comments. He has a whole arichos discussing the opinion of the Gra, but it's beyond the scope of this short Torah thought. The Alter Rebbe in Hilchos Talmud Torah the end of Yeridea. Simin Beis, Halacha Yud Beis, has an interesting chiddush. He also would, the attack of the Aruch Hashulchan would apply to the Alter Rebbe as well. He seems to say that the pasuk v'hagisa v'yem v'alayla means to think words of Torah, and therefore the mitzvah of Talmud Torah is to think words of Torah, but that is only if you're in a situation where verbalizing the words of Torah would negate from your concentration. If you're b'shas ha'iyim, thinking a deep concept in Torah, and if you had to say the words, it would disturb your train of thought, then you have the mitzvah of hagisa, which does not include dibur. In Siman Mem Zayin, the Alter Rebbe clearly paskins like the Mechaber, and he says that you make a bracha for the words of Torah only if you verbalize them, not if you only think them. So, how do we understand the opinion of the Alter Rebbe? What he seems to be saying is that the mitzvah of learning Torah is even if you only think words of Torah in a situation where speech will negate from your words of Torah. So if so, why, in a situation where one has that heter, so to speak, not to verbalize the words of Torah, does the Alter Rebbe not say in Siman Mem Zayin that one should say a bracha, a birchas ha-Torah, in a situation where he's not verbalizing it, because verbalizing it would negate his train of thought? So on a simple level, you can say that a person wakes up at the beginning of the day, he's not really in that state of mind where he's going to deeply contemplate words of Torah, but at the end of the day, maybe he will. And does he not have to say a birchas ha-Torah for that? So I'm going to suggest one possible interpretation of this concept based on a Tosfos in Sukkah. Tosfos in Masechta Sukkah, Daf Lamed Tes. Daf Lamed Tes Amud Aleph, Dibra Maschel Oiver. Tosfos seems to say that one can have a mitzvah, and it can be a bona fide mitzvah, like our situation over here, where a person is learning Torah, and he's not verbalizing it because that's going to negate his kavanah. It's a bona fide mitzvah. That is a mitzvah. You're being a kind of mitzvah of l'hagisa bo yem v'layla. But when it comes to making a bracha, over there we have a separate set of rules. There are certain mitzvahs where even though they are mitzvahs, we don't make a bracha, because making a bracha only applies to mitzvahs, only applies to certain types of mitzvahs. And Tosfos goes on to say that a mitzvah that's not extremely defined and is not extremely definitive, it's not in front of your eyes, over there we don't make a bracha. And there's many examples to this concept. Sfidas ha'omer, you have to know the exact day. And making a bracha on a fruit, it has to be in front of you. And why don't we make a bracha on Hala? Why don't we make a bracha on Haggadah? Why don't we make a bracha on so many mitzvahs? So often the answer is the mitzvah has to be extremely defined. So in our situation, one can suggest that the mitzvah is difficult to define, because are you really in a scenario where the dibur is going to negate your kavanah? Is it not? Even if it is it tangible? How long does it last? And so on and so forth. It's a very iffy situation, so possibly in such an iffy situation where the Torah is not being verbalized and it's not extremely defined and explicit, over there a bracha would not be applicable.